Chapter 1. The willful application and direction of man's mind and power to the ends which he desires is the necessary primal force which accomplishes the true organic will of the toxic magician. Often this application will entail doing what normal people call good, for it is the so-called good in itself which, by its very nature, brings about the desired results of the master, confusion, destruction, and the confounding of forces. The manipulator loves people who do good, and even more so, people who think good thoughts. An example will serve to illustrate. Everything which the establishment and church desire finally brings about its own ruin, and with it the establishment of higher order or orders of disorganization, which are the goals of the master. It follows that it is the church's desire to see the end of abortion, which brings about the necessary overpopulation, which in turn causes the toxic chaos necessary to see the destruction of the church and, to a large extent, the environment as we know it. The toxic magician sees all appeals to ecology as futile attempts to maintain stasis. Hence, the preoccupation with ecology leads to a level of destruction far greater than would be otherwise. For example, consider the cascading effects of water-saving toilets. In order not to clog them, we are now so discommoded that we have to shit in segments. People are not able to get rid of their feces as quickly as they used to, and this is not safe. Consequently, to safeguard their health, people are now buying black market toilets and installing them illegally under cover of darkness. The effect of ecology in this case is to create a new criminal underclass and reduce the population through the spread of disease. To cover up the real cause, the blame for the increased mortality rate has been placed on salmonella-infected chickens and tainted red meat, thus eliminating steak tartare and Ramos fizzies from the menus of fine restaurants. On the positive side, it allows people to become more familiar once again with their bodily products, destroys the abomination of grilled chicken Caesar salad, and brings back into vogue scatodivination. It is worth noting that if the issue were really water conservation, the entire problem could be solved more effectively with a 2-button toilet with, of course, the appropriate international icons of yellow drops for number 1 and a brown coil with rising steam for number 2. The practitioner constantly looks for small ways to jiggle the environment, which will disattract the attention of the masses. Something as simple as dropping little pieces of paper in the streets provides something to do for most people with guilt complexes and kill meaning in their lives. In a sense, the manipulator helps reduce the rate of suicide and spouse abuse. The master may even help an ecological cause, ergo the current preoccupation with flesh-eating bacteria, since the stasis brought about by its success will sooner or later lead to a greater displacement and hence more toxicity. Remember, every solution leads to more complex and involuted problems. The toxic magician loves problem solvers. As long as any force and motion is applied, counterforces of the most bizarre and unpredictable types begin to formulate and affect the entire field of play. The manipulator knows that we live in gigantic sets of interwoven mucoid correlation matrices where one tiny push in the right place can cause the entire field to collapse. This might be likened to Kung Fu magic. Chapter 2. The toxic magician knows there is no way not to create what the Hindus have called karma. Karma is good. He knows this fact very well, and he is also aware that most people live in a superstitious world of causes and effects. The master knows how to take advantage of every superstition because he understands that causes, as we know them, also create effects as we can't know them. The manipulator knows that everyone lives in bubble or bubbles of superstition or superstitions, where magical rewards and punishments lurk and abound, but somewhere in the dark of perceived order, there's a monster hiding, ready to devour the innocent. He loves to walk down the street in pride and certainty, knowing he's but one moment away from an attack of diarrhea. This makes him unique among the masses. The toxic magician always views his adversary with his head in the toilet bowl. The practitioner knows, for example, that if the pro-abortionists win by controlling the population, it is the wrong population that will be controlled. This is one of the key principles of toxic magic. Whether the church, for example, gets its way in terms of abortion or not is quite irrelevant. It is the quality and the nature of the forces set in motion for which the toxic magician strives. He knows that whatever is the most gross will triumph in the end. Whatever levels the playing field triumphs for a while. He knows that the faster technology develops, the greater will be the collisions and destruction within the species which develop the technology. Inertia must always be viewed from the psychological perspective of indolence. Indolence in one form or another leads to farce. Regardless of social strictures, laws, or anything else, the masses will continue to breed. The goal is 66.6% illiteracy in the civilized world and not the reverse. The goal of literacy is a simple ruse, a ploy of the toxic magician to set in motion those forces which interfere with the natural give and take of intelligence and stupidity and power and impotency. Thus, every so-called worthy goal is a ruse and the fuse of destruction. In the end, all goals reduce to control, and the means used to gain control are irrelevant and quickly forgotten. What difference does it make to the average individual or organization that 10 or 20 million lives are destroyed after a week or two? It is only important that there is a fresh chicken in the pot. This is called voodoo mechanic. Toxic magic, then, is the direct use and applications of one's power and abilities to speedily bring about the destruction of mediocrity and stupidity. However, the manipulator realizes that what follows is more due to chance than direct application. This means that you should not sit around too long thinking about what to do. Set something in motion now, then sit back and watch the fallout. The natural power behind toxic magic is the hatred of restriction and the joy in the power of freedom and the apparent random application of choice, risk, and chaos. Pain and destruction feed the planet more than pleasure. A manipulator's task is to always throw a little something into the works. Learn how to help everyone achieve what they want. It will, in the end, destroy them. By the perfect application of the mind of a master, individuals will develop the natural character traits to lead the world into a deep and abysmal darkness until the necessary form of transform destructiveness occurs, thereby freeing new and more interesting forms to evolve and develop. For example, as we wind down to ultimate world peace, expect the greatest possibility for a nuclear holocaust. Note that when speak of evolution, we use the words forms and not form. The idea of plurality is important in many ways, but for the moment, its importance lies in the fact that multiple users of toxicity can create competing ends for the yet unborn futures, which will create events which will be regarded as beautiful and grotesque. Chapter 3. The human mind exists on shifting gradients of superior force and power. The grade of the mind attracts and influences the forces which surround it. According to the strength of the practitioner's code of conduct and his willingness to help promote toxicity and chaos in the mindset of his neighbor, the appropriate result usually follows. Paranoia. The more you can help your neighbor get what he wants, the more is paranoia and anxiety. Used properly, paranoia is an ideal weapon to create false and misleading struggles which burn the energy of everyone involved. Paranoia is a simple misdirection virus. We say that paranoia usually follows since other manipulators may be operating in similar areas with different results in mind. But rest assured, all victims live in a world of suspicion and superstition. Thus, paranoia is the minimum a good toxic magician can expect. The only major requirement is that all manipulators know that their ultimate goal is for the good of the gross force field which is forever struggling to give birth to new life forms as quickly as possible, regardless of the cost of the older forms. Now, at last, the human race has the means to make radical transformations and provide the race the opportunity to do away with itself in its present dead-end form. Thus, for example, in order for immortality to exist, most of the human race will need to be destroyed, and it will be. At first, of course, there will be the obligatory moaning over the tragedy, but within a few months, this destruction will be seen as a happy and necessary event, just as a euthanasia will, in time, be seen as a new solution solution to overpopulation and the problem of funding social security systems. The scenes at the conclusion of Stanley Kubrick's brilliant movie, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, present an excellent example of this process. Every human, no matter what he tells himself, knows that simply by being alive, he has run into a brick wall in every aspect of his life. This world is a world of involuntarism, of zombies, and the final brick in the wall is involuntary death. The power of death lies not simply in the cessation of life, but in the reality that death always feels like the other and forces most people to feel in distance between their self and their here and nowness. Death is alienation, the final negative outcome. This is why the housewives of the world are seen everywhere, pushing baby carriages and sipping tea as the mushroom clouds form. The master, on the other hand, always keeps his coffin handy. Death, which we have been taught can neither be killed, endured, or cured, is the ultimate wound to the self. The toxic magician knows otherwise. He knows that once the right forces are in play, death becomes optional. If he has the mental organization, the active will, and the stamina to exercise his power, he will have immediate control over his adversaries. This allows him to buy time, and isn't buying time our most interesting and perverse activity? Chapter 4. Frequently the best way to gain control is through cooperation. Each and every individual has almost a comical desire to see himself destroyed. This puts an end to the waiting and the filling of time with nonsense. To fill time means to make time tense. This doesn't argue against the survivalist theory, but in fact is supported by most neo-Darwinian speculations. This race in this form is obsolete. It can't carry the possibilities of the future or futures for too long. Few individuals can tolerate the mental void of toxic chaos which surrounds him. Always there is some little quirk or some little error which causes him some misery, pain, or destruction. Without the need to change diapers, most mothers would strangle their infants. It always appears that this little something or that could have been avoided, and if we didn't wish to hide from the inherent ugliness of the human condition, we would have sidestepped this misery. But remember, those who do not readily, eagerly, and graciously accept this world of involuntarism will be labeled misfits and psychopaths. As such, be prepared, for enemies are needed to blame for every bad ending. Look at the dinosaur. They might have blamed the automobile. And if you look at things perversely enough, the death of the automobile might create a species more horrifying than the dinosaur. Even with horror and death aside, few can tolerate complete success. It leads to boredom and to the final realization that we are all food within the belly of a giant monster, whose final goals we only have a glimmer of, and the glimmer we see is not comforting. Thus, while man doesn't seek death per se, he seeks destruction, as this provides the opportunity for new and potentially more lively events. Destruction is the great act of control. It is the no to involuntarism. The fact that destruction does in fact lead to death is purely happenstantial. The organisms of the future will be able to destroy themselves and still continue to live. Where there exists an innate superiority or power, toxic magic will manifest itself. A good student will immediately understand this once he realizes that much of what he has called failure is truly prepotent success. This is particularly true when the student can write his autobiographies with complete dispassion. Every autobiography is nothing more than a story of destruction and decay. Whether a force is ultimately positive or negative doesn't matter, for it sets in motion other forces over which the magician has little or no control. This form of chaos is desired since unknown results lead to more toxicity and chaos. Toxic magicians have been called the children who hate, and if the truth be known, they do. They hate stupidity, death, and restriction. They loathe the idea of linear time.